Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now we've got something a little bit different for you today. In fact, it's going to be a little series of videos that I've got planned, and basically I want to talk today about Final Fantasy 7 Remake and the implementation of the gold saucer and what I'd like to see. And the reason I've thought of this video is because maybe 2 or 3 years ago I'd done a podcast with a few other content creators. I'll put the links to the two podcasts down below because they were both quite close in proximity when I'd done them, and they kind of both cover all the subjects that I'm going to be talking about over the next few videos. But today's focus is the gold saucer, and I want to split it down into a few different categories. So I want to talk about the existing minigames within Final Fantasy 7. I want to talk about games that we may see implemented from what we make with, from what we've learned so far in the first installment of the remake. I also want to talk about rewards, money, materia, etc. that you may get in them, as you did back in 97, with your Omni Slash and your limit breaks and things. And also talk about some type of online multiplayer, may I say, theories that may be considered. And this is all my thinking. I want to bring the debate to obviously the Final Fantasy 7 community, and just get the ball rolling on a few ideas. Obviously Final Fantasy 7 Remake has gone pretty quiet lately, so it's just about keeping us ticking over. And if you do like today's video, don't forget to hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel. Also, the remake and other games I do cover on my Twitch channel as well. I'm going to start making that more of a regular thing. Social media, Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on Facebook and stuff for obviously the better to connect to me. And also, if you do want to check out my Patreon feed, I have got a few tiers there now, and I am going to start creating a lot more content on the Patreon front, so please do consider becoming a member of that as well. And with all that being said, let's get into today's video. So firstly, let's look at the games that we obviously know from Final Fantasy 7 in 97 were about. So we had things like the submarine minigame. Apart from graphically enhancing that, it wouldn't be too hard to implement a few different maybe game modes, I suppose. That game, I'm sure, will be in it, but will just be visually better in my opinion. The snowboarding is another minigame, again similar. Graphically they can make that look amazing, giving us a few different types of levels. And it would be good if there's some type of leaderboards, but we'll get more into leaderboards later on in the video, because I've got an idea of obviously things that I'd like to see implemented, and that is one of them. The basketball game, again, apart from graphically enhanced mini-game, I can't see it being much different. Now, the one that gets me really excited is Chocobo Racing, as you can probably imagine. I can imagine there being implemented some type of Mario Kart, size game where, you'd go in different cups, finish bronze, silver, gold, you're ranking up your Chocobos as you go along, things like that. I want them to make a complete game of that inside Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and I want to be able to do a stream, for instance, stream for 4 or 5 hours, where all I'm doing is Chocobo Racing. So I want a game within a game, you know what I mean? I want content of that size, and I don't think it's too much to ask when you think about Mario Kart. So even the Super Nintendo, the N64 versions, yet they graphically might not be up to what the Final Fantasy 7 Remake version of Chocobo Racing is going to be, but the game size isn't massive, but maybe a few gig extra to implement this in the game. And I would really like them to expand, as I say, to the point where I can make stream after stream after stream where all I'm doing is Chocobo Racing, because there's so much content, the sense of time trials, getting certain items, materials and weapons and things, and make it a complete game within a game. That's my hope. I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to utilize the Chocobo Ranch. I want to be getting all the best Chocobos that you can possibly get. I hope that all evolves into something which is a lot more meaningful. Even though in 97 it was meaningful, I just thought after a few races you didn't really need to go back. I want them to give me something to keep on going back to Chocobo Racing. And it doesn't stop there. They could use the actual world of Gaia for the courses. So you could have a race, say for instance, around Midgar, or around maybe different sectors in Midgar, or from Midgar to Calm, things like that. You know, different scenarios, different races. And the thing is, if they're going to do races of that size and they've already made a world map anyway, you know, the size of the game, let's just say for instance, you made a whole new course selection, it's going to eat up a lot of obviously gigabytes, you know what I mean? So if they're using the world map for the races, that could be something I think that would be really cool to implement. And you know, the motorbike minigame as well. We've seen obviously this one in Final Fantasy 7 Remake where you fight Motorball. There's certain ways to take Motorball out before you obviously reach the end of the road. So they could implement other little bosses where you can take them down tactically in different ways, do time trials for it, you know, things like that. And obviously, you know, your loot, your materia and weapons, implementing something like that. And obviously graphically, we know what it's going to look like. I think that'd be a great way to expand on the motorbike minigame. Now for me, they're the main minigames that are already in the Final Fantasy 7. All the others kind of will just follow suit. But there's a few that obviously I want to discuss that we could possibly see. Now, obviously Whack-A-Box, that's going to be in it. You know, there's going to be, some type of implementation on that. We've seen it in the first part, and obviously then we've seen it in the Yuffie DLC. So I can imagine that still being a theme, and I can imagine that being implemented at Gold Saucer in some capacity. So that would be good. You know, I did like them, apart from obviously getting really frustrated with the Yuffie DLC version. I do think as a whole it's a good minigame, and they'd be stupid not to implement it. The VR missions that we've seen in part 1, I really hope that was just so we could fight hard bosses. You know, obviously the story, for instance, at that point we shouldn't be fighting bosses. So I'm hoping the VR missions were just to give us, you know, an opportunity. But I can see them being implemented in the Gold Saucer in some capacity, and that could involve DLC. Because we've seen in the past, you know, they can drop little DLCs of fighting a mega weapon and things like that. And I just think that may be an option in there. But obviously we've seen the Colosseum in War Market, and we obviously know the Battle Arena exists. Now, with the Battle Arena, again, they could implement a Colosseum type of feel. They could bring the DLC version. So VR missions, Colosseum and Battle Arena all kind of could be a similar feature, and they might just put it under the brackets, you know, of the Battle Arena. And another one is the 4 Condor game. Now, I think this is going to be a massive feature throughout the whole of obviously Gaia. As you can imagine, you know, with Final Fantasy 8, we had the card game. This is going to be that implementation where you can play loads of people across the world. But what I would like to see is maybe in the hotel, you know, the Ghost Hotel in the Gold Saucer, is maybe some type of implementation of like a championship event that's held or something along those lines, and where you can play loads of people, you can get loads of rewards, you get all the best boards, all the best pieces, and it's just evolve your 4 Condor mini-game experience, I suppose. So for me, that would be a great thing to have at the Gold Saucer. And now talking about them all as a collective, rare materia, weapons, items, accessories, we got them obviously in the limit breaks, we got them in the original. I'm sure they will be the prizes as well for the remake. I'd like to see the implementation of some type of live service, so leaderboards, you know, daily, weekly leaderboards, daily, weekly challenges, where you may have to complete things like certain cups in the Chocobo Racing, get a certain score in the basketball, and have like a weekly thing. And then once you completed that weekly thing, there being a reward at the end, whether it involves GP or the online leaderboard. So if I do really well, I go on, 100th, and I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but imagine I was like top 100. And just having that visual aspect of like a little bit of an online feeling. Some people may not want to see that, but I just think it's something to help once the game's been completed from everyone's point of view, to help the game continue and tick over. And content creators and, you know, just casual players being able to enjoy Final Fantasy, because I love the remake that much. Once it completed it, done everything, you know, got the Gotamarang and things like that, or the Gotamarang, whatever it's called. Once that was done, there was just no reason to go back into the game, because there was nothing worth my time in the sense of I haven't already done, and I didn't want to bore myself with it. So some type of online service, yes, I'd like to see leaderboards. That's not too much to ask. Now, when we talk of it from a multiplayer aspect, it's not something that Final Fantasy have done with Final Fantasy 7. But you know, there are other Final Fantasies where the multiplayer has been implemented, and I'm not talking about full-on expansive world exploration with another person, although that would be actually really cool. I'm on about maybe, like, you know, clicking to go in a snowboarding race or something in DP or online and racing against, like, say 5 or 6 other people in a 7-man race to complete it. It would be really cool if with the Chocobo Racing you could do the same. You know, you could click online and race against other people, see their gamer tags above their names, etc, etc. And I suppose it could be the same with the basketball, the submarines. It wouldn't be hard to implement. And now another thing I've actually thought about whilst making this video is, in those podcasts that I've done, I think it was briefly mentioned, and we talked about the implementation of mini games from other little small companies who create games like similar to, you know, Pokemon, little Final Fantasy, Zelda type of games. I think it'd be good to implement something like that within the Gold Saucer. So again, another game within a game. So let's just take the format of Pokemon, for instance. You know, you play for hours and hours and hours. A very small file in the sense of, you know, size of a game. And, you know, it'd be good if you could go into an arcade, click on a machine, play a game that you're going to get invested in for a couple of hours. Again, similar to Chocobo Racing, it'd be great if I could do a stream on a little indie game within the game. And I just feel that potential as well. It could create an opportunity for smaller workshops and smaller, obviously, gaming companies to go to Final Fantasy. Hey, you know, here's our game, we'd love you to put it in. And you know, that might sound far-fetched, and they may not go to that extent of obviously getting other publishers of games to put their game within their game. I understand that, but just maybe themselves then creating some type of small little indie games where you go around collecting monsters, or you go around leveling characters up. So like a really 2 or 3-bit Final Fantasy would be great. Do you know what I mean? Just sitting there on an arcade machine. Anyway, that's nearly it for today's video. I must admit, like, we've covered quite a lot, and there's probably more things that are going on in my head regarding all these games that I've mentioned as well. But anyway, if you did like today's video and you do want to discuss anything I've covered in this, so current games getting expanded, the games like, you know, For Condor, or maybe you've even thought of something you come up with yourself, leave them down in the comments below. We'll have a discussion, and I have got other videos like this planned. So until next time, take care.